tonight at home against the Cleveland Browns. The Denver Broncos right now, after back-to-back wins, sit at 7-5 and are in firm control of a playoff spot in the AFC with their rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. It's pretty awesome to watch. I'm seeing development. I'm seeing him make progressions throughout the course of the season, and I think he and Sean Payton have a good connection. So I'm excited about the game tonight. Not going to be easy. The Browns, while their quarterback situation is up in the air, their defense is super legit. So it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be cool, but not snowing like we saw in Buffalo last night in the winter wonderland up there at Orchard Park. Insane. Absolutely insane. I knew 3 hours before kickoff who was going to win that game just on the basis of seeing a little zoom in by the weather station. And it looked like a blizzard. And I'm like, well, the 49ers are done. And they were done. The Bills hammered them in crazy weather. But tonight, Broncos and Browns on Monday Night Football. Coming up in 20 minutes, Joel Gunderson's going to talk us to focus in on the Ducks. He's going to talk us. He's going to join us to talk about the Ducks coming off their victory over Washington. It finishes off an unbeaten season for the Ducks, the only unbeaten team in the FBS. And now they're going to face Penn State in the Big Ten title game, thanks to Michigan going into the horseshoe and upsetting the Buckeyes, who were favored by 21 points. I'll get to that in just a moment. The weird part for me is, why is Oregon favored by 3.5? But the most important question I have for Joel, and really for any of you Duck fans out there, do you want Oregon to win the Big Ten championship game? Now, it seems like a crazy question, but based on the way the bracket is set up, it might be beneficial to lose the game. I'm not suggesting they would go out and try to lose the game. I'm just saying that if you lose the game to Penn State, it may not be the end of the world, because you could end up facing in your first two games maybe Boise State and the winner of the Big 12, instead of getting a bye week and facing a team like Georgia right out of the gate. Which would you prefer? Now, I'm a big proponent of extra rest, of getting an extra bye, of getting time to get your players healthy and playing one less game, because the ultimate goal is to win a championship. But I really would like to know what you think, and we'll talk to Joel Gunderson about that. Now, at 4:20, Chris Cartman, who is with Sun Devil Source, he joined us a few weeks ago, and he's going to join us again today because the Sun Devils, they pulled it off. They finished off the season with 5 straight wins. They took out their bitter rival, Arizona, 49-7 on Saturday. And with that win, they punched their ticket to the Big 12 championship game. And what's amazing is that Kenny Dillingham, the former offensive coordinator at Oregon, has taken over the program, which is his alma mater. He did so when it was left in ruins by Herm Edwards and the previous staff. They were under sanction. They didn't have the proper support within the program. They weren't investing in the program. And he came in and started talking about Activate the Valley. And at the moment, it seemed crazy. But 2 years later, it seems like the guy's a genius. I think they are the best story in college football this year. I think Kenny Dillingham is the coach of the year in college football. And the Sun Devils going from back-to-back 3-win seasons to now having a 7-win improvement year to year and competing for a conference championship on Saturday is simply amazing. In fact, both Iowa State and Arizona State being in that game is amazing. And I think the reason why the Big 12 is not getting more respect right now is because the teams that were picked to finish last finished first, and the teams that were picked to finish first have finished last. So no one really saw it coming. No one can believe it. And yet here we are, ASU and Iowa State competing for a championship. And I'm a big fan of Kenny Dillingham. He's the youngest coach in FBS, 34 years old. He doesn't act like other coaches do. He's got a lot of energy. He's kind of hyperactive, but he's an offensive guru and knows how to coach quarterbacks. And they've got one of ours, the local kid, Sam Levitt, out of West Lynn, who has had a tremendous year. He is the highest-rated freshman on either side of the ball, whether true or redshirt, with 300 or more snaps this year. The highest rated. He is playing great ball. And they've got my favorite player in college football to watch, Cam Skattebo. I've been talking about Skattebo long before anyone cared, even going back to last year when I saw him for the first time. And then I saw over the weekend that Nick Saban said that Cam Skattebo is his favorite player to watch in college football. And I know why, because the guy is a freak. He's like a human bowling ball that enjoys contact. So I'm really excited about that whole story, and I'm looking forward to Championship Saturday. And I can only expect more chaos because that's exactly what we've gotten over the last couple of weeks. Nothing but chaos in college football. And Saturday, this past Saturday, was another example of why this has been the best college football season in my lifetime. Playoff expansion has given more life to the regular season, and both the transfer portal and NIL dollars have given us parity. The chaos started early Saturday with Michigan and Ohio State. The Buckeyes as a 3-touchdown favorite, got upset and embarrassed. Incredible. And let me give you some of the numbers of what Michigan pulled off on Saturday. The Wolverines held Ohio State to 252 total yards, lowest number on the season. OSU was held scoreless in the second half for the first time this season, and Ohio State gave up 172 yards rushing, the biggest number for their defense on the year. And that was the first road win for Michigan all year. In recent history, Michigan plays their best football against Ohio State. They physically beat them up again and knocked them out of the Big Ten title game. Even worse for Ohio State, this was supposed to be the year they got the win and snapped the losing streak to Michigan. But they lost. And now the Wolverines are going to have an incoming recruit, Bryce Underwood, the top quarterback in the country. And with him will come other recruits because they want to play with him. And Michigan's got resources. Ryan Day and Ohio State missed their opportunity, and they did so by trying to play big boy football. They tried to play Michigan's game. They wanted to show that they were physical, that they could win that battle at the line of scrimmage and try and run the football. And the problem is they played right into Michigan's hands. They tried to play it between the tackles where Michigan is strongest instead of getting outside and using their speed at wide receiver. It was an inexcusable loss, and it really is a good thing that we have playoff expansion this year. Ohio State is in the playoff no matter what. If they weren't, and that Michigan loss as a 3-touchdown favorite cost them, I think Ryan Day would have been fired. He would have been fired on Sunday. In that state, that game, it means everything. And I truly believe this. Even if Ohio State goes on to win the championship, it's not going to feel the same for them because they would have done it in a year after losing their 4th straight to Michigan. Elsewhere in college football, I think Miami played their way out of the playoff after their loss at Syracuse. Miami didn't have a resume before Saturday, and they certainly don't now. And they won't be in the ACC title game. Their defense has been leaky all year, and it finally cost them on Saturday. Somehow Clemson lucked out. They lose at home to South Carolina, and yet somehow with 3 losses, they're in the title game taking on SMU. And if they win, they'll be in the playoff. And like Ryan Day, Dabo, a huge benefactor of the expanded playoff field. Texas knocked out Texas A&M, and thanks to Syracuse, Alabama has new life, and the ACC is only more than likely just going to get one team in. I still think Indiana and Penn State are frauds. The Big 12 is being disrespected, and the idea of Boise State getting a bye is comical. But with all of that said, here's how I think the 12-team playoff will look after championship Saturday. These are the 12 teams that I think will get in. Out of the Big 10, you're going to have 4. Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and Ohio State. I think all 4 of those teams are in no matter what. Out of the Big 12, you'll have 1. ASU or Iowa State, they'll meet Saturday morning at 9 in the Big 12 championship game. The ACC is going to have 1. Clemson or SMU, I think Miami is out. The SEC will get 4 teams in. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. The Mountain West will get 1. Boise State or UNLV. And, of course, Notre Dame is an independent. Those will be your 12 teams. It's incredible. That Miami loss shook things up yet again. And I do think Alabama will get the nod over Ole Miss and South Carolina. I think in this scenario, and I think you all know this to be true, if you're choosing between those 3 teams, you can argue resume. Lane Kiffin certainly would. But I really believe that this is where brand is going to matter to the committee. This is where what you've done in the past and what you've been all about is going to matter to the committee. And I think Alabama will get the slight nod over Ole Miss and over South Carolina. And I know South Carolina has come on strong and they're playing good football right now, but they already played their game against Alabama and they lost. That's what happened. They lost the game. I know they're playing good football now, but what can you do? And both Ole Miss and Alabama have wins over Georgia. So there you have it. I think those are the 12 teams. I'm fascinated by everything. And in regards to chaos, we could see more of it on Saturday. Here are the games that we have coming up on Saturday for the championship weekend. On Friday night, number 22, UNLV is taking on Boise State. They've already played this year down in Vegas. It was a close one. This game could go either way. Right now, the Broncos are favored by 4. Fortunately for them, they get to play it at Albertson Stadium in Boise with the Smurf turf. On Saturday morning, 9 o'clock on ABC, Iowa State and Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. The winner gets into the playoff and likely gets a first-round bye. Georgia, Texas, 1 o'clock on ABC. Penn State and Oregon, 5 o'clock on CBS. And then Clemson, SMU is a 5 o'clock kick on ABC. Saturday is going to be great. All right, we'll come back on the Rip City Drive. When we do, Joel Gunderson will join us to talk Ducks. The biggest thing I want to know, is it better for Oregon to win or lose the game on Saturday against Penn State? How does he see that? We'll find out next on the Rip City Drive. Yeah, I can't get enough college football. I need it, man. Give it to me. I can't wait for Saturday. This season's been so great. And joining us right now to further the discussion is Joel Gunderson. Hey, Joel, I got to know from you because I think it is absolutely crazy to want to play an extra game to fall into the 5 seed to have, quote, an easier path. But where do you come out on this? Do you want Oregon to win and beat Penn State and clinch the 1 seed? Or would you prefer they face possibly Boise State and the Big 12 winner in their first 2 games?
Well, I feel like I'm entering one of my friend group chats here where I'm going to be the outlier. I've kind of, up until the last week or so, been on the fence of more towards the side of I don't think the 5 seed is a bad gig. And I think where we're at now is it's not necessarily if one is better than the other. I think it's more of a situation of based on how it's looking like it's going to turn out. Even if you are the 5 seed, it's not a bad deal. So I don't think there's any reason why Oregon at this point would not want to have the number 1 overall seed, go in there with an extra week of prep time, getting to know who your opponent is, get all those little dings that your body goes through healed up. But if they come out on the short end on Saturday against Penn State and they end up with the 5 seed and their path is Boise State and then an Arizona State or Iowa State, there's nothing wrong with that either because you are, assuming Oregon goes in and plays their A game in those 2 games, you basically have a clear path to the Final Four, which is ultimately what you want anyways. And I think if Georgia wins and you avoid them in the first round, potentially as an 8-9 matchup, that's the big thing. And that was the scenario where a lot of Oregon fans were thinking, this 5 seed might be the way to go because when they're looking at the 1 seed, and you're in a situation where you might have Georgia there, that was the big red flag of like, I don't know if we necessarily want this, but I'm assuming Georgia wins on Saturday, beats Texas again, and they'll avoid that situation. So I think either way, Oregon set themselves up in a great spot, whether you're the 1 or the 5.
Yeah, I think in terms of matchups, I still look at Georgia as being probably the most difficult matchup for Oregon because of how good and powerful they are in the front 7. Do you see it that way?
I do, but I'm starting to really become impressed with this Texas defense overall. And granted, Texas A&M was didn't put up much of a fight, but I think what we're seeing this season, where there's no true juggernaut team, as we've talked about, each opponent that you could be facing in the Final Four or the Final 8, they present something that could give you problems because no one is elite on both sides of the ball. So when you're talking about Georgia, yeah, that front 7 on defense, when they're healthy and engaged, they're as good as anybody. And it's still Kirby Smart. It's still a Georgia program that has been really dominant the last 5 to 6 years. Texas has got the same thing. Overall defense is great. Neither one of those teams has an offense that scares you because now Oregon has a really, truly great defense as well. So if you're talking about like one team that could really be the one, it's still Georgia to me. There's still, if they piece it all together, they have a championship pedigree. There's players on that team that have won. There's the coaching staff knows how to do it when they get there. So that's still the overall number 1 team. But, it's really come down to the fact that, through 14 weeks of the season now, there really is there's no 2019 LSU. There's no 2021 Georgia. There's no, 2011 Alabama team. And there's just, if those teams were at an A+ right now, the best team this year is an A. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's what we've gotten. We have more parity now, and there's 5 or 6 teams that enter this playoff with a true legitimate chance to win the whole thing, and that's what's really exciting about it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I love the parity. This season's been fabulous. The easy fix to the playoff format, and the problem is the same morons that gave us the Bowl Championship Series and tried to sell us on that, and then the 14 playoff are the same people that created this format for the 12-team playoff. But the simple fix here, and you know this, Joel, just reseed the teams after the first round.
It is, and I'm also a proponent more of having the first 2 rounds of games be at the home stadium of the higher ranked team.
Of course,
that eliminate. I think we're going to see, in a couple weeks here when we have those first round of games, just how electric it is and what that environment's going to be like. Then you set it up to where the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, and the Peach Bowl have you have the Final Four in the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl or whatever it is. Just you pick the 2 best, and every year you rotate, and that way you can do the reseeding. You're not having to worry about fans having to travel. Where are they going? They do it in the NFL. They do it in the NBA. Fans can travel. They can make adjustments. So you're 100% right. Reseed after the first round, and that way you're not potentially being punished as a 1 seed or a 2 seed by having a really great team maybe slip up late in the season and fall back, and then you're playing them while other teams have an easier trip, down the road. So it's 100%. You're absolutely right. Will it happen after this year going into next year? Probably not. But in 2 years, when the system runs out and on a 2-year contract, you hope that something drastic will change.
No question. I wanted to ask you this. Do you think Miami played their way out of the playoff after their loss at Syracuse?
I think so. When the fact that they went 10-2 and so many of their victories this year came with a lot of controversy from the referees,
Yep.
to the fact that they just didn't look good. Really, I mean, they had 1 or 2 games this year where they looked really good, and you're thinking, wow, he finally got it turned around there. To lose to overall was a pretty good Georgia Tech team. I think we can all agree on that now. But then to lose the way they did at Syracuse, it's just the fact that, I've talked about it on this station for years. It's just a typical Mario Cristobal team. That's what they do. They have a lot of talent. They're in every game. And then they have these games where there's just absolute mind-numbing decisions on the coaching staff at the end of the game. And what it does, maybe it's not fair to the players who only have 2 losses, but the coaching staff is the reason why they should not make the playoffs. They just flat out do not deserve it. Even in their wins, they didn't deserve it, and they had 2 not great losses. If you want to be a playoff team, you have to win both of those games.
I agree. All right, so right now it appears that we have 4 teams in from the Big Ten with Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State. We've got 3 teams in from the SEC in Tennessee, Texas, Georgia. 1 from the ACC, the winner of the game on Saturday between Clemson and SMU. Notre Dame is in, and we'll have 1 team in, ASU or Iowa State from the Big 12, and 1 from the Mountain West, Boise State or UNLV. So it looks like we have 1 spot that's available. Who do you think the final spot will go to? Is it going to be Alabama, Ole Miss, or somebody else?
Well, I'm a big proponent of not having 3 lost teams in, especially in the first year, because you don't want to set a precedent. The reality is, though, the hottest team in the country might be South Carolina, and that's a team that I don't think anybody wants to play. A little bit limited offensively, but that is just a team that has an extremely disruptive defense and a quarterback in Lenore Sellers that is as hot as anybody right now. So if you're talking about who deserves it, potentially, I think it's South Carolina, even though I don't want to give it to a 3-loss team. But the reality is, if Clemson wins, I still think SMU gets in there at 11-2. They've had a fantastic regular season, first year in the ACC, and they've done nothing really to deserve not being in there. And if the playoff committee does want to say we're not going to punish teams for losing in the conference championship game, then you can't have a team entering with 1 loss going to 2 getting left out, even though they are, I believe, ranked 9th now overall, and they probably should be higher. Deserving, I think it's South Carolina, but should get it, I think it's SMU.
All right. I want to ask you this, too. Which was a worse loss, Alabama going down at Oklahoma or Ohio State at home to Michigan?
Oh. Well, off the top of my head, I think the Alabama loss to Oklahoma is worse, because if you want to get psychological about it, I think that the Ohio State loss was very much about a team completely overthinking and just getting in their head. There's no reason why Ohio State doesn't win that game by 30 points. I mean, we've all seen Michigan this year. And then going into that game without their top 2 players. The Alabama game just looked like a game where Oklahoma flat out knew what they were doing, and Alabama didn't have an answer for it. And I think Ohio State, because of the history with Michigan and Ryan Day in the past 3 years going into this, I think it's not more excusable, but it's almost more understandable. And this is where the playoff committee, how much are they going to get into the psychology of things, or are they just strictly going to look at numbers? But I watched both of those games in its entirety, and Alabama was completely outclassed and outmatched in every way in that game. And Alabama's a better team than Oklahoma, make no doubt about it. But on that night, Brent Venables knew exactly what he was doing, and they were never in danger. So I give the slight edge to Ohio State in terms of it being a little bit better of a loss, even though it was at home in the ultimate rivalry game, whereas Alabama, that was just one of those nights where they were just flat out beat.
All right, Joel, and we're talking with Joel Gunderson right now as we get ready for Championship Saturday. What have you learned about the Ducks this year that maybe you didn't know or you were uncertain about before the year began?
Well, I learned that it's really hard to play 8 conference games in a row. And I think that, even though it was getting quite a bit of mention towards the end there.
Yeah, with no bye. Yes.
With
Brutal.
no bye, having 3 of the last 5 games being Midwest trips. And, hey, that's what they signed up for. When you go to the Big Ten, you know that you're going to have to make those trips. So there's no excuse there. But playing the eight game conference games in a row without a break, I think they were just completely run down and worn down, and we saw that. And on Saturday, the thing that was pretty evident throughout the year was resolve. They played terrible to start the season against Idaho, played better against Boise State. Then they had a real good bounce-back game against Oregon State. And then they weren't really tested outside of Ohio State and Wisconsin. But to come back the way they did on Saturday and just really shut the door on that game early, of course, it got the monkey off the back for Lanning. But I think what it is I was just talking earlier about how there's no, a really elite team. And this is something that a lot of people are starting to recognize, though. But when you're talking about a team that's Oregon is top 10 in offense and defense in pass yards and passes defended, sacks allowed, sacks defended. I mean, you go up and down the stat sheet on it, and they are top 10 in everything. So they truly are the most complete team. Whether or not that's enough to get them at the end remains to be seen. And the fact is that Lanning's still a young coach, and they're going to be heading into a situation here where they're going to have to be on their A game week in and week out. But what we've seen this year is this team has a lot of grit. You have a 6-year senior quarterback, and that's why you brought him in. You brought him in here now for the playoffs. And as good as he's been during the regular season, he's played a lot of football, and you're going to need him to be on his A game and be completely mentally engaged in these games, because when Oregon doesn't make mistakes, when Gabriel doesn't make mistakes, Oregon's a different team. And we've seen it throughout the year where, he has little lapses in judgment where he'll, throw a couple interceptions, especially in the red zone, and it really derails what Oregon's trying to do. But when he's on and he's not making those mental mistakes, they are the best team. Offense, defense, they're finally, an average team on special teams. So that's been the biggest thing this year is the offense has taken a little bit of a step back from last year. The defense has taken a big step forward. And I think that's what's allowed them to enter this playoffs is overall the best team in the country.
Well, you know what's great? Because that's where championships are won. I'd rather take a step forward or two on defense and a step back on offense, because when it comes down to it, you got to be able to get stops to win a title. Is this the best Ducks team in your lifetime?
It is. It's always been the 2012 team, and I don't think anybody should make an argument about it, even though, they came up short against Stanford, didn't have a chance to play for it all. But when you're talking about roster talent, coaching, skill position, but it's up front. It's the front seven on defense. It's the offensive line. It is the best team that Oregon's ever had. And I was texting with my dad during the game on Saturday, and I said, boy, I know we've mentioned it a couple times this year, but it is truly a beautiful thing to watch a great defensive team because, offense, it comes and goes, and there are weeks when they just don't have it. And look at the Wisconsin game. For the most part, it's very rare when you have a great defensive team for them to have a total letdown. So going into it, that's the big difference. And that's what that 2012 team had. They had a really good defense. They obviously had Mariota on offense and all those guys. But this team overall, I mean, you just look at the way they stack up against some of these other teams, the size, the physicality, the athleticism. They're so much bigger, faster, and stronger than any roster they've had. And then you factor in that they have a truly, truly great coaching staff, it appears. So, yeah, I don't think it's close. I think at the beginning of the year it was easy to say, yeah, this is probably going to be the best Oregon team, but we had to see it on the field. And early on, like I said, it didn't look great. As the season's gone on, I think they've erased all doubt.
All right, Joel Gunderson here on the RipCityDrive. Joel, man, I appreciate the time. This season's been fun, man. Hasn't it been great?
It's been fun, and I cannot believe we're already to the postseason. It just every year it feels like the season goes faster and faster. But it's been a lot of fun in a lot of ways. And I think around the country, we saw this past weekend where there's still so many games that matter. So for a little bit of the trade-off you get with the playoffs and not having the one loss and you might be done, we get a whole bunch of extra games that matter. And so that's added a whole layer of excitement to it. And it's been a lot of fun. And the exciting part is it's not even close to being over yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best part. More fan bases, more teams with a lot of interest right up until the end of the season. Hey, Joel, appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the game on Saturday, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, bud. You too.
There you go. Yeah, college football season this year. Right up until the last weekend of the regular season, we had multiple games across the country with playoff implications. And it doesn't get any better than that. And I've said this, and I'll say it again. You Duck fans out there, what more could you want from a football season? Everything that you could possibly want and everything that you dream about every hour of every day is right there in front of you. And I can honestly say this, and I've never been able to say this before. The Oregon Ducks are good enough, sturdy enough, strong enough to compete with any team in the country right now. And that includes Georgia. There are tough matchups. Texas, Georgia, those teams that are physically dominant at the line of scrimmage and very good defensively, those teams will give Oregon trouble, but they're good enough to compete and defeat anyone. So you have to feel great about your opportunity. Now, for me, when it comes to this whole idea of, winning the Big Ten title or not winning the Big Ten title, getting the bye, not getting a bye, I'm just a big believer in rest. And if I can play one less game in order to win a championship, I'm going to take that, even if I have to face Georgia right out of the gate. I would rather play one less game and have extra preparation time to play Georgia than I would to have, quote, an easier path. And you know what? Sometimes the path you think is easier is not easier. Arizona State right now is one of the hottest teams in the country. I just don't think you want to F with the game like that. Get the extra time, have extra time for your staff to do all the work they have to do, prepare for the game, and then most importantly, give your guys rest, a time to heal up and get ready to rock. Health is so critical to winning a championship, and when you play an extra game, there's another 60 minutes on the field where the attrition can come in, and you don't want that because to win a championship, you're going to have to be one of the healthiest teams. It's critical, and that injuries play a massive role in both college and the NFL. Usually, at the end of the year, the teams who are healthiest are the teams that are competing for a championship, almost always. But the Ducks, I like where they're at. I'm a huge Dylan Gabriel fan. Loved him at Oklahoma. Love what he's doing this year, providing great leadership, decision-making, and just in control of the offense. And he's gotten better week by week. I think Dan Lanning and his staff have gotten better this season between the white lines, in-game decision-making, making the right call, the way that they've coached the guys up throughout the course of the season after the slow start to the year, the way they've worked and gotten the offensive line to play at a high level. And then, obviously, the talent that you see on the defense really shining through. How many times they sack in Washington? What was it, 10 times? 10 sacks? Are you kidding me? Oh, that had to feel good for Duck fans. After 3 straight losses to Washington and having Husky fans just all over you, to finally get over and just drop the hammer and get 10 sacks and dominate the game, it had to feel good. But this year is all about one thing. It's not about going undefeated. It's not about winning the Big Ten. It's not about beating Penn State on Saturday. It's about winning a national championship. That's why Phil has spent $1 billion, is to win a title, and they're in their best position to do so in my lifetime. And I've been out here a long time. It's impressive to see. All right, we'll keep things rolling. One story I'm going to get to later. There are a couple of geniuses who snuck into the Texas A&M game with assumed names wearing construction hats. They were arrested when I think they should have been given front row seats to the game. I'll share that story with you. It's pretty wild. We'll talk Sun Devils with Chris Cartman at 4:20. My adopted Sun Devils are playing great football. And Kenny Dillingham, former offensive coordinator at Oregon, has his team in the Big 12 championship. And I'll get to the Trailblazers at 4 o'clock. Wild game last night at Moda Center. Anthony Simons, white hot in the third, but it was not enough. And then Luka Doncic, off for about a week with a wrist injury, comes back. It took him about 5 minutes to shake off the rust, and he was out there balling. I don't know what's going on with that guy. When I look at him, like, he's fat. And then I watch him play, I'm like, that guy's a baller. Luka Doncic is a freak. He is fat.
Chad.
He is. He doesn't move quick. You would think for, conditioning would be fairly high priority for being a point guard in the NBA. Not for Luka, though, man. I'm going to be fat and ball out. And I like fat guys that can ball.
It's true.
And Luka can do it. All right. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, I'll go to the phones here in just a moment. I wanted to play this for you going back to Michigan and Ohio State. The Buckeyes embarrassed at home as 3 touchdown favorites over Michigan, who is a one-dimensional offense. They can't throw the football. Their biggest strength is straight up the middle, especially on their defensive line. And for some reason, Ohio State thought it'd be a good idea to try and line up and play Michigan's game to show that somehow they had learned how to become as physical at the line of scrimmage as Michigan because they've had their head handed to them in the last 3 years. So they lined up and went with that game plan and got beat at home. It's an embarrassing loss, inexcusable, and probably a fireable offense if you're Ryan Day. And what made it worse was the melee after the game where Michigan had a lot of pleasure flowing through their veins. They decided to plant a flag, and that created a melee where pepper spray was brought out. Not a good scenario. Never been sprayed with pepper spray. Yeah, I don't think I want that to happen. And there were people that got bloodied up. It was just a giant mess. And the crazy part was after losing in embarrassing fashion to Michigan, here's what Ryan Day, take a listen to this exchange between Buckeyes head coach Ryan Day and a reporter.
Ryan, do you have comment on the melee that happened at midfield after the game? You had staff and assistant coaches that looked like they got bloodied during the skirmish.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of it, but I know that these guys, are looking to, put a flag on our field, and our guys weren't going to let that happen. So, I'll find out exactly what happened. But, this is our field, and certainly, we're embarrassed at the fact that we lost the game. But there's some prideful guys in his team that weren't just going to let that happen.
That's pretty incredible. He defended his players' actions too. He loses to Michigan in embarrassing fashion and then defends his players for acting like little bees after they got upset at home by Michigan. Wouldn't surprise me if the NCAA stepped in and tried to convince the conferences that they need to put an end to the flag planting situation. I've got no issue with it. I kind of enjoyed the whole scene, but you can't have situations like that break out in stadiums where people can get hurt, injured, or potentially killed because of a fight that breaks out. Especially when you got 300-pounders. These football players have helmets. Those can be used as weapons. You just can't take the risk. So it's going to be up to the conferences, but I think the conferences will step in and try to levy some type of disciplinary action if those things take place. I thought, who was the coach? Steve Sarkisian, right? Smart. He had seen how everything had played out through the course of the day with some of the incidents at Ohio State, at Arizona, in these rivalry games where teams were wanting to plant flags. He just let it be known before the game, like, hey, if we win, nobody's going to pull that type of nonsense. So good on Steve Sarkisian to let his team know ahead of time, like, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to take a chance and create some type of melee out there. But what an embarrassing loss for Ohio State. And the next big game that Ryan Day wins will be his first. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. It's like, what are you doing out there? So bad. All right, let's go out to the phones. Jim is on hold. He wants to talk about the Trailblazers last night. Anthony Simons had 27 points in the game, scored 24 of those in the third quarter. He only played 23 minutes because he fouled out early fourth. Jim, what's your take on that?
My take is long-term season ticket holder, center court across from the benches, about
Nice.
sixth row. 7.5 to 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Simons gets his third foul. One of Chauncey's assistants comes up and says something to him. At the same time, Kidd calls Luka over and says something to him. Next time down the court, 5 to 10 seconds later, Luka throws it to the corner to the guy Simons is guarding, and he picks up his fourth foul. I'm not a Billups basher, but I thought it was an obvious call to get him out of the game before he could pick up his fourth before the end of the second quarter. And some of us are yelling it, and Kidd makes the right coach's decision and jumps on it and gets Simons his fourth foul. Simons gets 24 in the third quarter, like you said, fouls out in the fourth.
Yeah.
I thought it was a terrible non-decision.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, too. I mean, the Blazers did a great job of getting back in the game after Ant fouled out in the fourth.
Oh, it was a great game. It was a fantastic game.
But I have to wonder, if Ant would not have fouled out, would they have had the opportunity to win that game instead of get close and not get over the hump?
As close as it was at the end to have that overturned call about with the foul, they could have won the game without him, yeah, I think they would have won that very exciting close game if he hadn't have fouled out. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I was glad to see Sharp just take over also in the fourth quarter, but yeah, I think they'd have won if Simons hadn't have fouled out.
Yeah, I agree. It was a decision. Those are sometimes a coin flip, but I agree. Billups should have pulled Simons and rested him for the rest of the half, so he didn't pick up the additional foul. And the Mavericks did the right thing to attack him, and it was just one of those unfortunate scenarios. That was only like the second or third time he's fouled out in his entire career. And I know what Chauncey was thinking in that moment. He's like, we're struggling on offense a bit. Ant is a guy we need on the floor to kind of settle things down. And they took the risk, and it came back to bite them. And then as soon as he checked in, like moments after he checked in the fourth, he immediately picked up his sixth foul. And then he was out. The Blazers did battle back. But like I always say, the officiating in the NBA is wildly inconsistent. It's bad on most nights. And so I just don't get frustrated with the officiating anymore. In order for my own mental health, I've had to adjust the way I view the officials in the NBA. I just assume that they're going to be bad every night so that I don't get caught up and get frustrated with the inconsistency, the bad calls, the no calls, or whatever the case may be. Because they're not great. Not great. And thankfully they have replay assistance to be able to correct some of the wrong calls that are out there. But man, it was a great game last night. Very, very entertaining game, a high-scoring game, a lot of fun to watch. And you had, two stars, Luka going off for 36 points, 13 assists, and then Anthony Simons with a white-hot third quarter. And we'll hear from it at 4, but he explains how he knows when he's on a heater. And players, they just know. Guys that are high-level scorers, guys who can shoot the ball really well, there's something that clicks and they recognize. So we'll hear from Ant as he explains it. All right, if you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. I'd love to get your take on the college football season now that the regular season is over. What do you think about your first regular season with playoff expansion? I think it's been an absolute home run. So I'd love to get your take on that. Do you think Oregon would be better off losing the Big Ten title game to, quote, have an easier path to a potential championship? We'll get to the Trailblazers next. We'll hear from Ant and from Coach Billups, and I'll share some insights on what I saw last night at Moda Center here on the Rip City Drive.
Here's what you need to know.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 4 o'clock. Trailblazers got edged by the Mavericks last night, 137-131. Simons had 24 points in the third, the highest point total of his career in one quarter. The Mavericks got 33 points off of 21 Trailblazers turnovers. Portland's back at it tomorrow night in L.A. to meet the Clippers at Intuit Dome. Tip-off at 7:30. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 5:30 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Monday Night Football in Denver, Broncos and Browns. Kickoff at 5:15 on ESPN. Denver, a 5.5-point favorite. The 49ers will be without Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. Both are headed to the IR with knee and ankle injuries. The Bears will stick with GM Ryan Poles, and he will lead the search for a new head coach after the team fired Matt Eberflus following their loss to the Lions on Thursday. And Gus Malzahn is stepping down as head coach of UCF and was named offensive coordinator at FSU. More of the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing is coming at you right now.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, we'll talk more college football coming up in 20 minutes. Chris Cartman from Sun Devil Service will join us. My adopted team, the Arizona State Sun Devils, finished off the season with 5 straight wins. They took out Arizona 49-7, and their big three of Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, and Cam Scatteraboo were tremendous. And they'll face Iowa State Saturday morning down in Dallas for the Big 12 championship. They are favored by 2.5 points, and the winner of that game will get a spot in the playoff and most likely a first-round bye. But it's been a great story. I think the best story in college football this year. Back-to-back 3-win seasons. And former Ducks offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham went back, took over the job 2 years ago at his alma mater. The program was in ruins. And after back-to-back 3-win seasons, they have a 7-win improvement. They're 10-2 and are playing for a championship. So we'll talk Sun Devils, Big 12 championship, and we'll take a look at the upcoming playoff rankings that come out tomorrow at 4 o'clock with Chris Cartman. I do want to talk some Trailblazers. I thought last night's game was very entertaining for an early season NBA basketball game. It had some wild swings in terms of runs by both sides. Luka Doncic was back in the lineup after missing about a week with a wrist injury. It took him about 3 minutes to shake off the rust. He was tremendous with 36 points and 13 assists. And, you know, the crazy part about watching Luka is, one, he's very strong. He's not lightning quick, but he's got a great handle. He knows exactly where he wants to go with the basketball. He gets to his spots, and it's hard for some of the smaller guys to get around him. It's hard to defend him. He can back you down. He can pass over the top of you. He can shoot over the top. He's just really good. But he's got a great feel when he's working off the bounce to get defenders off balance, up in the air, and he creates contact. He's very good at getting to the free throw line. He was awesome last night. The big problem for the Trailblazers really came from the turnovers, and it's been an issue for them. It's something they're focused on. They're trying to correct and improve. But for a young team that's trying to play with pace and focus on moving bodies and moving the basketball, it's becoming an issue. The Mavericks got 33 points off of 21 Trailblazer turnovers. And if you're in the minus category in points off turnovers and the disparity at the free throw line, it proved to be too much. It was a crazy game because the Blazers were on fire. They were 18 of 31 from downtown. Both teams shot better than 50% from three, and that created for the wild swings. I mean, there were a couple of moments where the Blazers got white hot, but the big story, of course, came Anthony Simons. He was in foul trouble in the first half. He ended up fouling out early fourth quarter, but he saved his best for the third when he caught fire and finished with 24 points on 8 of 9 shooting, and he was 5 of 6 from downtown. 5 of 6. Anthony Simons was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And I haven't seen a guy like that since Dame get that hot that quick.
Simons gets a screen to the wing. 3 on the way. Got it! He's on fire!
and the Blazers lead 85-84, a 19-point quarter for Anthony Simons. And the loose ball is grabbed by Jeremy Grant. Here's Grant on the other end, slides into Simons, open three on the way. Yes! 22 in the third for Anthony Simons. Blazers lead 88-87. Blazers by 1 under 3 minutes to play in the third. Simons attacks. He drives to the rim off the glass. Puts it in! 24-point third quarter for Anthony Simons. 90-87 Trailblazers.
Yeah, Travis was on fire last night. Anthony Simons, 24 points in the quarter. And he was asked after the game, like, how do you know when you're on a heater?
Probably after, you see 3 shots go in a row. Then you know, all right, especially the way they go in. You kind of shooting them, and they go in. It's a pretty clean make. And after that, you just all right, we better test, see if I'm hot, and just kept shooting. Got a couple wide open looks. They left me, and just went on from there.
See, the good scores, they know just the way the ball's going in the hoop, the way it feels when they're coming out of their hand, and then before you know it, heat check, and he was on absolute fire. He also talked about the loss, his insights on, the game where they had stretches, they played terrific basketball, but come up short.
Yeah, I think we played well. We started off a little sloppy in the beginning, just a couple of coverages we wasn't, locked in on, and but we were still in the game at halftime, and we stood everything, gave ourselves a chance to win the game. That's all you can ask for, but obviously it hurts knowing that there's a couple instances where the team could have did a little better. Sure.
Yes. So, I mentioned the turnovers. 33 points off 21 turnovers. Billups has been trying to get the team to focus on, turnovers and rebounding. And he's like, hey, we plugged one hole, and all of a sudden we spring another leak.
I mean, you plug one hole with the rebounding, and we did an awesome job with that. And then, the other hole was just, they did 33 points off of our turnovers, which is against any team. It doesn't even have to be a really good team. Against any team, that's a huge, huge number. It's tough to overcome that. But, man, we shot the heck out of it, 58% from three. You score 131 points, you should win that game. It was tough to get a stop.
It was tough. Billups made a very good point after the game where he's like, look, and I think this is important for a young team, and we're watching them start to come together and show some flashes of what the coaching staff wants them to do, but they're not good enough to overcome slow starts, lack of attention to detail, 33 points off of turnovers. They're just not talented enough to overcome those type of problems. They've got to win in the margins, and it's hard for a young team to be that tight for an entire 48 minutes. So that's what they're continuing to work on. So a good reminder that last night, you got to come out more focused and engaged defensively and not allow Dallas to get into a good flow. And you've got to continue to pay attention to ball security. It's critical. You have to do it. And he talked about the loss.
We fought hard as heck, man. We didn't start the game off with the right intention. We cost us, and we have a really thin margin of error in type of situations, and you're playing against a team that was in the Western Finals last year. So even if they're shorthanded, they still got their best player, and they surrounded with a lot of shooting. So we wasn't very focused coming into the game for some reason, but we ended up turning it up. And then obviously at half, Ant caught fire in that third quarter, but was in foul trouble the whole time, since the second quarter. That hurt us, but, man, we played hard as heck. We really did, and once we did finally start stepping up the defense and the pressure and the fires and moving around and flying all over the court, we finally got them to miss some shots.
And finally, I like this too, where Billups was asked, you okay losing a game like this, where, maybe you're a little bit sloppy, you got issues with turnovers, but you got your guys going balls to the wall. And here's what Billups had to say.
Absolutely. We lay it on the line and give it all we have. We'll live with the results any day. And I thought we definitely did that. Everybody that played, they laid it on the line out there. They gave it all they had.
All right, so the Blazers take the loss. Like I've told you before, the way I look at this season is I'm not worried about wins and losses, and I'm not blowing smoke. I've just had to really step back and understand what this team is trying to do. One of the most important things this year in this rebuilding project that they're in is player development. So I'm looking for individuals and how they continue to develop. I'm looking for, how they're adjusting to the concepts that the coaching staff want them to focus on. And I want to see growth. And so we're seeing that with a number of players. The caller earlier mentioned Shaden Sharp. Shaden Sharp did not have a great game, but he showed flashes in that fourth quarter where he got to the mid-range and he was working off the bounce. He was trying to facilitate with Ant out of the lineup, and he stepped up and made some big shots. We're seeing the emergence of Shaden Sharp, which is great. Another young player on the roster that they acquired on draft night, Denny Avdia. He came over, and it was a bit of a slow start to the season. He started out with the starters. Now he's coming off the bench. And the last week, he has been fabulous. The last week plus. Defensively, leading the charge on the break. I mean, he pushes the tempo. He ain't messing around. He's like a runaway freight train coming down the tracks when he's got the ball on the open floor. He had 20 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, a couple of steals in the win on Friday, and last night, 21 points. And he was aggressive in the fourth quarter. There's a lot of things I love about Denny Avdia. And here's what DeAndre Ayton had to say about Denny.
Freaking stud, man. He's been doing this thing, honestly. And, he's been taking a big role of just, being our other ball handler, our guy that, play makes and, who could attack the paint and create some offense for us when we're stuck in the mud. So, he's truly the, X factor in the way he can do everything, score, rebound, and, play make. We truly believe in him just rebounding and pushing the ball because it put pressure on our guys completely.
There's DeAndre Ayton talking about Denny. Now, so we're seeing some individual progress. I think some of the other youngsters, too. Delano Banton continues to play sensational ball. I'm impressed by him. He's more than just an end-of-the-bench scrub type of guy. There's something to him. He's been great, and Coach trusts him. Chris Murray's had some flashes. Ryan Rupert made an impact last night. So we're seeing the young players stepping up and showing signs of life, which is very important because this team, this franchise needs data on their young players to be able to, have the ability to make decisions about the core moving forward. But then I also look at the team aspect. Portland right now, middle of the pack in defensive rating. They're making big strides defensively. Denny talked about this the other night where he said we have a lot of guys who are very athletic and long and committed to playing defense. We haven't had that in a long time. But most importantly for me, I love the ball movement and player movement. And what I loved about the game on Friday, Anthony Simons and Shaden Sharp both got off to a slow start. But Ant, he just picked his spots, and then he was very strong in the fourth quarter. And it's because he was committed to playing the game the right way, making sure that the ball doesn't stick. And last night, in the last 29 assists. That's a terrific number for a team that over the last several seasons has been near the bottom of the pack in assists per game. But the last 3 games, they had, I think it was 31, 26, and 29. Those are great numbers. So they're moving the basketball, they're moving bodies. They're giving a much better effort defensively. They still have to work on turnovers because that's been a big problem. And, of course, rebounding is an issue as well. But we're seeing signs of growth. So, and I'll tell you what, if we see signs of growth with the youngsters and they give us the type of effort we saw last night, I'm like Coach Billups, I can live with that type of loss. And it's good. And I think they're exceeding expectation in terms of what we thought they were going to be so far this year. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We got to get back to football. Little preview of the Big 12 championship coming up at you. The best story in college football this year, in my mind, the Arizona State Sun Devils. 10-2, 5 straight wins, hammered Arizona, and now getting ready to face Iowa State. And with the win, will secure a spot in the playoff. A 7-win improvement year over year by Kenny Dillingham, the youngest coach in college football. It's pretty impressive. Chris Cartman, Sun Devil Sources, coming up next. Talk about what I think is the best story in college football this year with the publisher of SunDevilSource.com, part of the 24/7 network. Chris Cartman is back on the Rip City Drive. Hey, Chris, the Sun Devils were picked to finish last in the conference this year. Where did you have them slotted before the season began?
I thought they'd be around 11, 12. I didn't have an actual vote in the preseason media poll this year, a basketball poll. So I wasn't put to the test, if you will. But I thought ASU would be around as a 500 football team before the season. But then once I saw them play a couple of games, I quickly felt like they were going to develop into a much better team, primarily because Sam Levitt's growth was quite staggering from early on in the season. And the defense, the questions that I had about their defensive capability, especially at cornerback, were somewhat answered. But let's be honest, this team has won 6 games by 1 score, which has never happened in ASU history. And its turnover margin is the best in the Big 12 because Sam Levitt has taken such good care of the ball. Normally you have to learn how to win games. So to go from 3 wins to 10 wins and winning all these close games with a redshirt freshman starting quarterback, it's incredible. I haven't covered anything like this in the last 20 years covering ASU.
Yeah, you just finished your 20th year covering the team, so this has got to be pretty wild for you. So I wanted to ask you this. I went to a couple of games in person earlier in the year. I went to the opener against Wyoming, and I was just impressed at how well they handled that game. And then also I saw them against Kansas. But it wasn't until they bounced back on a short week to beat Utah where I thought that maybe they had something special. At what point in the season did you realize that they were something much more than what you had thought? Was it a particular moment or a game or a play where you're like, okay, this team's got something going here?
Well, when Cam Scadaboo ran all over Mississippi State and looked like it sort of confirmed what I thought about his athleticism being a notch better and the offensive line clearly being quite a lot better, that was like a first moment. And then the second one, like you felt, was when ASU beat Utah. And obviously Cam Rising, a shell of his former self in that game, and that was an advantage for ASU. But the physicality, both sides of the line of scrimmage, is something that Dillingham used Utah as like his North Star. Kyle Whittingham was like what ASU wanted to orient to being, and then they actually smacked Utah around. And really only, I think ASU probably would have been 11-1 had it not been for the Levitt not being able to play at Cincinnati. But by the time that Utah game was over, while I thought that the team might lose at Kansas State because it's a very difficult environment to play in, that was the only game really after Utah where I picked against ASU or I thought ASU might lose. Every other game, I felt pretty confident that the team would win.
All right, I wanted to ask you about this. They've got their AD, Graham Rossini, who's clearly doing a heck of a job with the entire athletic department. They're going to face a new issue this year where great success with the team that they've had. There are going to be other teams looking to poach some of their players. How are they set up financially with the support from the school to be able to keep their roster? And what are the prospects moving forward with the guys that they do have that could make a return if they desire to do so?
That's a great question. Some of these things are very fluid. The House settlement is not going to be ratified until probably April. Schools are going to have the $20.5 million, I think minus $2.5 million, I believe, for scholarships. And then they're going to have to decide how they're going to allocate the rest of their money before you get to the traditional, or the NIL that has existed in the last couple of years. So I don't think there's been decisions that are made about what percentage of that's going to be allocated to football at ASU versus other schools. So there's one real question at ASU that it could be a negative, which is the school has more varsity sports than any other school in the Big 12. And so if it decides to allocate in a equivalent manner to other schools with its distribution to all sports as a, maybe 10 or 20% of that overall amount of money, that could lead to football having less. Now, the positive thing is there's a lot more NIL that's developed in the last several months, and because this is a big market, there are a lot more opportunities. So my understanding from talking to people that are very familiar with the ASU's NIL efforts, the Sun Angel Collective, and then even at the school and among the coaching staff, is they feel very confident about their ability to retain the vast majority of their players, even including some of their star players. And when you have a 10-win season and people are very happy about that, and they believe that continuing at ASU is going to improve their draft stock further in the case of like Sam Levitt or Jordan Tyson, that has to be part of the calculus as well when the schools are already going to be paying them quite a lot of money, probably at least high six figures or maybe even more than that. They're thinking about their overall prospects. And you look at Arizona for one example, look at the coaching change from last year, what happened with Noah Fafita. He went from everybody talking about him as the it guy as a freshman quarterback to now all of a sudden with Brenden and the changes that were made there, his status is not nearly as good. So I think those concerns are also probably going to keep some guys at ASU.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We're talking with Chris Cartman from SunDevilSource.com. Okay, so Jordan Tyson, their star wide receiver, he's had a big year, and since the Kansas game, he has been the dominant number one target. Unfortunately, he's out indefinitely with a shoulder or collarbone injury, which Kenny Dillingham mentioned today at his press conference. How do they go about replacing him with the game coming up this weekend against Iowa State?
So the good news for ASU is Iowa State, despite being a really great team, its most vulnerable weakness would be its run defense. 14th in the Big 12, and really not better than, in terms of its statistics, than some of the teams that ASU has its way with, including Arizona. And so you're going to probably end up with more Cam Scadaboo, which is saying something because he's always going to get 20-something carries. But ASU went to more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends stuff, went to more direct snaps and what they call the wild scat package, where he scored 2 of his touchdowns. And then I think in the passing game, you're going to get probably more screens. They've already used the screens pretty effectively because teams are biting so hard on their runs and play actions. And then you'll probably see somebody else play the role of Jordan Tyson in a lot of their motions and movement pieces. That could be Xavier Guillory. He's a starter and a good athlete. He's just had to play a second fiddle role because of how good Tyson's been. But I don't think they're going to rely as much on their passing attack in this game as they have in prior weeks.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. How do you see that game playing out?
Well, I think it's not going to be a high-scoring game, despite the fact that Iowa State has 2,000-yard receivers and is a very physical team. It has a good defense. I think number one scoring defense in the Big 12, around 20 points a game. ASU's been giving up in the 20s pretty consistently, sometimes lower than that. I think only one opponent scored more than 24 points in the last 7 weeks. So my sense is that this is going to be a game probably in the 20s, and it's going to be whether or not a turnover margin obviously is always big, and special teams. ASU has a question mark with its field goal kicking, but it hasn't necessarily costed a game since Cincinnati. I think it might come down to the last possession or two in this game. It's going to be a very good game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Should be an exciting game. Kickoff will be 9 a.m. on Saturday. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the playoff. Do you think the winner of the Big 12 championship game on Saturday will get a bye in the playoff?
Probably not. That would take certainly would take at least a loss from Boise State, I believe, to UNLV in that championship game. It potentially could even take more than that, like Clemson beating SMU and then ASU somehow ending up ahead of Clemson. I think it's fairly unlikely, like maybe only a 10 to 20% chance of ASU getting a bye.
Do you think Miami played their way out with the loss at Syracuse?
Gosh, no, I'm not ready to say that quite yet. I'd like to see what happens in some of the championship games, just given how much parity there is with some of these 2 and 3 loss teams in some of the leagues. I'm going to watch closely and see how some of these games go before saying that.
Graham, I think Iowa State and Arizona State are 2 quality teams. Do you think the Big 12 is getting overlooked because You have teams that were picked to finish at the bottom that are at the top and vice versa. Do you think that's why? Because I have a feeling that if Utah and Oklahoma State were at the top of the conference and they were picked to do so, that we wouldn't have all these questions about the Big 12 right now. How do you see it?
You're making a great point. I think that there is always a inherent bias that exists with teams that are expected to not do well at the outset of a season and the way that they're viewed through that lens through the duration of the season. Like, there's no other way around it. The blue blood programs, they're always going to get like a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. Plus, on top of that, you have just the amount of media coverage that exists with the SEC and the Big Ten and the way that they're perceived, and you put all that together, and it's I think it's a little bit unfair. And keep in mind also the Big 12, as some of these coaches have pointed out recently, I think very, very smartly, including Kansas State's coach, they're playing 9-game conference schedules, and other conferences are playing 8. And so that actually makes it harder in the Big 12 with so much parity. So, like Alabama, like I think if you took the names away and you just looked at what they've accomplished, I don't know that a 3-loss Alabama team, the way that unfolded, it might be a better team than ASU, but I don't know that it is more deserving than an ASU. Is how I would describe it.
All right, Chris, final question for you. What is the key ingredient for how Dillingham pulled this off, to go to a Big 12 championship game in his first year after taking over a program that was in ruins and on sanctions and had won 3 games in back-to-back years? What's the key ingredient? How did he pull it off?
That's a great question. I think he has this mantra, which is it's a very process-driven thing. Instead of being result-oriented, he says, we're just going to have more fun working harder than we ever have in our lives. And guys really bought into that. They had some early success, and they were focused on just what they could do in the next day, in the next hour, in the next minute to try to make themselves better. And so I've never seen a team that got better from the beginning of spring ball all the way to the end of the season. And I think it's because they're so process oriented, and they've worked harder than I've almost ever seen any ASU football team.
Wow, it's amazing. It's got to be fun for you. 20 years. You've had some good years, and you've had some very lean years. This has got to be pretty wild for you, I would guess.
Yeah, this is a top 3 year, I would say. 2007 was Special Dennis Erickson's first year. The team won 10 games. It was unexpected. 2013, they won 10 regular season games and hosted the Pac-12 championship against Stanford. Lost to Texas in the Holiday Bowl. That was a great season. But as far as like measuring against expectations, which to me is the ultimate thing that you're trying to do, this is the best, most special season probably since the 1996 Rose Bowl.
Well, Chris, I love talking football with you, man. Great work. Keep up the great work, and have fun on Saturday, and we'll catch up in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. That's Chris Cartman, who covers the Sun Devils. This is why college football is so freaking awesome right now. I mean, and it's not just Arizona State. That's my favorite story, but there's a lot of great stories. Indiana. Army's been a great story this year. BYU up until the last 2 weeks of the regular season. Oregon and what they've been able to accomplish in the first year in the Big Ten. SMU, first year in the ACC on their way to the conference championship game. I mean, you can look around and just pinpoint all of these different stories. What about UNLV? If they win that game on Saturday against Boise, they're going to the playoff. Is that not wild? What a job Barry Odom's done there. After getting fired from his last job, he takes over at UNLV and now has them on the verge of going to a playoff. I love those stories. So much fun. So much fun. And yet, Dillingham is proof that you can take over a program that, is a good program, but not elite by any stretch of the imagination. But if you've got the right coach with the right energy and the right support around him, you can turn around a program quick. You can do it. You just got to have the right support around you. Brenden, you've got to have hope for what the Beavers are going through right now when you see a quick turnaround like we're having at ASU.
Oh, 100%. You go back to, Dilly last year. And not to say that he hadn't flipped the culture, but it was, there was a reason they're like, we'll take that bowl ban, even though we know we're not going to
They
one.
were bad last year.
Right. Not a good team. And, you go get a quarterback, and, it's cliche. We sit here and say about the NFL all the time. I think it's just as important in college. And I think pound for pound, Chad, for these schools like Oregon State, Washington State, with limited NIL resources, I think you kind of got to go get a dude at quarterback and figure the rest out later. And Washington State, it just kind of worked out that John Mateer turned out to be a good player. They coached him up, all those things. But like Oregon State, yeah, go buy yourself a quarterback.
Well, why did Smith not recruit Levitt?
He did. Levitt and Smith and Brian Lindgren. There wasn't a good connection there. And that's why when Smith went to Michigan State, Levitt's like, I'm out. So that was, whatever it was, style, whatever it ended up being, they didn't see eye to eye.
Well, you know what's crazy about seeing Sam Levitt now that I've watched him in his first 4 years as a starter? Like he's not just okay, he's like legit. He's the top-rated freshman in the entire country, either side of the ball. Like, he's going to be a big-time star, and he makes big-time throws, and he's got incredible poise, and he's very accurate, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I just don't understand how a player like that, and this happens every year where you're like, how did that guy slip through the cracks? I don't understand how Sam Levitt was not approached by more high-level schools.
Well, and my thing, I'll take it a step further, Chad. How many Division I Power 5 quarterbacks come out of this little pocket of Portland here?
Yeah.
Very, very few. So throwing that in there too, like, again, not to say there haven't been guys, but like you go back to, like Derek Anderson, Kellen Clemens in the early 2000s.
Joey Harrington.
Justin Herbert, obviously down the freeway a little bit, but still local. So yeah, I think it's baffling that Oregon State, heck, even Oregon wouldn't bat an eye with how he's playing right now. So, that says something about the evaluation process, and maybe those scouts and recruiting experts that are, maybe they don't spend a lot of time out here in the.
What storyline has been your favorite this year? Is it Arizona State? Is it what we've seen with Army? Is it Indiana? Like, which one has kind of captured your imagination this year?
Yeah, no, for me, it's been Indiana, with probably Arizona State coming in number 2. How down, my entire life, Chad, entire 28 years on this planet, Indiana was a basketball school. And Kirk Cignetti just shows up and just starts to win. And that was something I'm like, whoa, this is fun. Same with Dillingham and ASU, because a lot of people are like, that guy just talks loud, he's fat. There was a lot of criticism early on. And to see him winning now is cool. And then even Arizona State's opponent, Iowa State, people were ready to run Matt Campbell out of town there in Iowa State. And now they're right back to, being at the top of the conference. So I just love to see new teams in there. You can throw Army in there as well. Just seeing a new healthy dose of teams. And to your point, I think the playoff is just really going to bring us the best every year.
Now, speaking of Matt Campbell, he's the head coach at Iowa State. Kenny Dillingham did a work study at Iowa State years ago. But he talked about Matt Campbell, and I want to play this since Brenden brought him up. But here's the key. And I was talking to there's a lady here in the office whose son is being recruited by Oregon State right now. And she said the one thing that she appreciates about Coach Devan and their entire coaching staff is how real they are. They're very down to earth. They're very real. There's no smoke show. Like, very easy to talk to. You can reach out to them with any questions you have. And I from my understanding, the experience with Oregon State and their family and their son's been terrific through the entire process. So that's great to hear. But they're real. And Coach Dillingham today was asked about Matt Campbell. And this is what I think programs should be looking for. I think in life we like genuine people. And genuine. People who are real. The ones who what you see is what you get. Here's Kenny Dillingham talking about Matt Campbell.
Yeah, his culture and his realness. I think he's one of the most just real people in the sport. I mean, you see the passion, emotion on the sideline. Like, you see it. Like, it's not fake, it's real. When I was at Auburn, when I was the OC at Auburn, I had the ability to go study at one program in the country. I had 2 days that at that time Coach Malzahn would let you go and study with the team. And I alluded to this versus Cincinnati because the defense coordinator at Cincinnati was the linebacker coach at Iowa State. And I chose to go visit Iowa State. That was the program that I wanted to study from because I thought that they were overachieving at that time early in his career at a high level before he had built it up. Now he's built it up. Now they're achieving at a high level consistently. And I wanted to go just study. And what I took away was like the realness of the culture. I was like, man, like, he's over here like joking around with a dude, and then he gets in the front of the room and demands respect. And I'm like, man, this culture that he created, I feel like is sustainable.
There you go. That's Kenny Dillingham. And I saw Campbell on the sideline on senior day. He was in tears because he was having to say goodbye to some guys who helped really be pillars of the program. So I love good stories like that. And Campbell's a darn good coach. You know, sometimes for these coaches, they get a chance to go elsewhere, but they choose to stay, and they realize that it's a better spot for them. You know, we've seen that with Mark Few at Gonzaga, right? He could have gone elsewhere to coach, but he decided to make Spokane his home, and it's worked out well for him. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. When we come back, two guys who were arrested that I think should have been given keys to the city. You know, it's a pretty funny story. I'll share it with you next. It took place down in College Station with the Aggies and Longhorns over the weekend. All right, raise your hand if you've ever snuck into a sporting event. When I was younger, my friend Jason and I, we would go to a lot of basketball games, and we would normally hit the scalpers out in front of the Coliseum. They'd be hanging out down there. They still do it, but not so much anymore because all the tickets are digital. But back in the day, the scalpers were large and in charge. And, the Blazers in the early 90s, it was hard to get tickets to the game because they were sold out. So we'd buy tickets anywhere for as cheap as we could. We went down to watch Philadelphia one night with Charles Barkley, went down to catch the Celtics. We'd go down and watch some of the big teams, buy scalp tickets and get in just because we wanted to see some of the stars. I was a huge Larry Bird guy. So any chance that I could get to get close to him or be in the same arena as Bird, I was all about that. And I'll never forget the night I was standing outside of the Coliseum, on the side, the north side of the Coliseum where the team bus would roll in. And I felt special because I waited after the game and Larry Bird walked out and he waved to me. And I was like, okay, that's the same as a fist bump. I feel good now. Larry Legend gave me a little wave. So that was pretty cool. But we would sneak in. The cool part was that in the Coliseum, they had those, double doors. So you'd walk through a set of doors and then another set of doors to get into the arena. So what we would do on nights where we couldn't get scalp tickets or the prices were just above our Red Robin salary at the time because we were in high school, if you waited long enough, back then the hackers, the smokers, they would have to exit out of the Coliseum and go through the double doors to, get a smoke in, and then they'd go back in. So we'd wait for a smoker to come out, and then we'd sneak in between the two doors and wait until someone else came out, and then we'd pop in. And we did that on a regular basis. The hard part is that you'd walk around the concourse trying to find an open seat. When you'd find one, inevitably someone would arrive to their seat late and you would get bumped out, and then you'd be back to walking the concourse again and trying to find another open seat. But we'd do it all the time. But this past weekend down at College Station, Texas A&M in Texas, this is pretty hilarious. But there were a couple of guys who got busted at the game for sneaking in. And according to the Texas A&M police, 2 men wearing reflective vests and hard hats entered the stadium with fake construction credentials and were arrested for criminal trespass. Now, Rusty Surrett, who works on local TV down there, he said, I just found an arrest report for these two. A 21-year-old from College Station and a 22-year-old from Houston were arrested Saturday at Kyle Field. The names on their fake credentials were Harry Ascrack and Duncan McCockiner. I have to make sure I say that fast enough so I don't get in trouble. And they got fined $3,000 and $2,000 respectively. Criminal trespassing and for using a fake ID. But you've got to love the fact that they actually donned hard hats and reflective vests. So they didn't just try to sneak in like using a fake ID or something. They actually went in full costume to make it look like they were doing something important. But again, it begs the question, if those are your two names and they used Harry Ascrack being one of them and Duncan, how does the person looking at the ID not see that and realize what's going on?
Had to be assuming, Chad, that someone would just go, oh, yeah, they belong kind of a thing. And it's actually so bad, Chad. This sounds like a plot to a movie that came out not too many years ago. Like, this is pretty interesting. I think had to have some mighty big confidence to be like, oh, yeah, let's put these on the credential names.
Have you ever snuck into a sporting event?
No, I was sitting there thinking about it when you mentioned it. I think I had been, I remember a very brief time when I would go to Beaver games as a kid and there were still scalpers outside, but it wasn't like what you described. So I think I was a little too late for that. Security had already been tightened up, and the exception of try not to pay like admission at like a local game, like a high school game or something like that. I remember we'd watch through like the through the chain link fence for like high school baseball and stuff, but never anything big time.
Yeah, that's pretty creative. I just feel like if they made it through with the elaborate costumes and fake IDs, you got to let those guys pass.
That took some effort, Chad. Like to get fake, like construction hat, hard hat you can go get it, but printing out fake IDs and stuff, that takes effort.
Yeah, I think the rest is overboard. Just escort them out of the stadium if you want them out, but you don't need to arrest them. Let's go to Michael in Lake Oswego. Michael, I appreciate the call. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, so I'm an ASU alumni, right?
Yes.
Love what the team is doing, but I really wanted to talk to you about what happened at the BYU game, because it really seemed like Dillingham had lost his mind there for a moment. I had flashbacks to Marshawn Lynch. They're up 5 with very little time left, first and goal on the 3-yard line. So what do? They got Cam Scattaboo, who can plow it in, put them up 11, 12 with an extra point. So, but what do they do instead? They turn around and run backwards out into the middle of the field, and then they throw the ball up in the air, and then they have the big melee with everybody rushing the field, and they almost lost that game. They were 2 yards away from BYU catches the ball on the 2. That was horrible coaching, and I wanted your take.
Okay, well, first off, let me ask you a real quick question. What's it like for you as an ASU alum to see what's gone on this year? How cool is it?
Hey, it's great. I'm older than you, right? I'm 56. So the first year I was there, second year, 87, they won the Rose Bowl. So that was awesome. But no, it's cool, man. This is fun. I mean, it's exciting to see what they can do. I think they might get a little deep here.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. I love it. In regards to what they did, Kenny Dillingham explained it. He was trying. He didn't want to risk a fumble and give BYU life, so they thought they were going to be able to just run the clock out. But the first couple of plays, as they went backwards trying to spin clock because BYU they didn't have any timeouts left, they didn't take enough time off the clock, and it left 7 seconds on the clock on 4th down. And so they went for the deep pass, but the problem is it hit out of bounds with still a second remaining. Dillingham admitted after the fact that he would handle it differently and just hand it off to Scattaboo and risk a fumble if he had a chance to do it over again. He it's one of those deals, Michael, where I think he just overthought the situation and tried to get too cute and nearly bit them in the backside. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll take a look at the potential playoff field when we come back. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's going on, my friends? Chad here. Monday Night Football in Denver. Kickoff is coming up in just 15 minutes on ESPN. The Broncos and Browns. Denver is favored by 5.5. The 49ers are going to be without Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. Both are headed to the IR with knee and ankle injuries. And the Bears are going to stick with general manager Ryan Poles. He will lead the search for a new head coach after the team fired Matt Eberflus following their loss to the Lions on Thursday. Gus Malzahn's going to step down as head coach at UCF. He's named offensive coordinator at FSU. The Trailblazers got edged by the Mavericks last night. They're back at it tomorrow night. They'll be in L.A. to meet the Clippers. That tip-off will be at 7:30 from Intuit Dome. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 5:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. It's presented by Coors Light. Anthony Simons last night, 24 points in the third quarter, the most points he has scored in a quarter in his career.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, I've had some time to think about this in regards to the melee that we saw in Michigan with the Wolverines, or not in Michigan, but at Ohio State after Michigan had pulled the upset over the Buckeyes as 3-touchdown underdogs. Okay, so I do think that Ohio State reacted a little bit weirdly after that loss. They were obviously very upset. They got upset by Michigan. Fourth straight year they've lost to the Wolverines. But flag planting, like if you're going to plant a flag in the opposing team's stadium, that is not a post-game celebration. That is strictly a maneuver to taunt the opposing team in their own crib. So I can understand why the home team does not want you doing that. And quite frankly, if I were a fan of the Buckeyes and the players just allowed someone to plant a flag and showed no resistance, I'd have an issue with that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're going to taunt, don't be surprised if the home team's going to have an issue with that and want to get into a fight with you. So I guess what's going to have to happen is the conferences are going to have to step in and make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't go down. I was wildly entertained by the entire melee. Anytime you're bringing out the pepper spray, I'm all about that too. Like, I want it to get as crazy as possible. But there's just too many risks. When you got players who are large in size, very strong, they've got helmets which can be used as weapons. You've got people down there on the field. There's just too many bad things that can happen. You got to find a way to stop it. It was awesome, though. Don't get me wrong. It was great to watch, but the conference is going to have to step in and say, we can't be doing this. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're in my crib and you try to plant a flag, yeah, I'm going to have a problem with that because you're doing it to taunt me. And I'm not going to be cool with that. So we're going to have to throw down. Now, the other thing that's crazy, too, like that Georgia Tech game was wild. 8 overtimes. But what's bizarre about college football now, after the second overtime, it's like a penalty kick in hockey. They just line up and you have to go for 2-point conversions. You don't get the ball at the 25, and then they flip into the field, too, which is really dumb. I just think it's ridiculous that you have two teams that battle for 60 minutes in an important game with implications, and you're going to end it on 2-point conversions? Man, someone's got to sit down and rethink that rule. Don't get me wrong. It was fascinating television and a lot of fun to watch. But what are we doing here? So these two teams are going to play for 60 minutes, and they play to a tie, and you're going to end it with penalty kicks? 2-point conversions? And here's another question. Why are teams that are supposedly good at their sport, why is it so hard to get the ball in the end zone from 3 yards out? They don't have plays to be able to do that? They don't have an entire offseason to devise plays to get you in the end zone? The one thing I thought was pretty sweet, too, look, Kirby's smart. He's crazy. Like, he's really crazy, but he's also an awesome coach. And he's the head coach, right? And he's got a defensive coordinator. Who was calling the defensive plays in the overtimes? It was Kirby Smart, calling timeout after timeout after timeout, working with his crew, and calling the plays himself. I love that, man. The head coach took responsibility. He's a defensive guru, and he said, I've got this. And so he went out there and made sure his guys knew exactly what they needed to do. And somehow they survived that game and got the win. I mean, they still would have been in the SEC title game regardless, but I mean, come on. That was a crazy game. I just don't like games like that, of that type of importance, ending with 2-point conversion tries. They've got to find a better way to clean it up. I know why they did it. They're trying to, for player safety. Yeah. But there's you know what that is? It's like putting a runner on second base in baseball. There's got to be a better way to do it than that. Morons. We don't need ghost runners, and we don't need teams lining up for 2-point conversion after 2-point conversion. And the other thing is, so one team, they run a 2-point conversion, it fails, and you go to the next overtime, they flip sides of the field. Well, you can't just run it on the same side of the field. You got to take time to walk down to the other end. I don't know. I don't understand. All right, Broncos and Browns coming up. Denver, I think, the line's gone up to 6. It's very simple for the Broncos. This year is it's nothing but pure pleasure. All I cared about was the development of Bo Nix. Well, he's developing and starting to look like he might be the guy. Like Denver has found their QB1. He's playing terrific football, but they're going to make the playoffs. That's like icing. I didn't even expect that. But if they win tonight against the Browns and they beat the Colts next week at home, then they're probably going to make the playoffs. And they have also found their QB1. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a tough game for Denver tonight. I would expect a one-possession game. The Browns are very good defensively. Very, very good defensively. They're going to give the Broncos some fits tonight. Fortunately, on the other side, you have Jameis Winston. And he likes to play for both teams sometimes. That's just how he rolls. All right, let's go out to the phones. Raider Mike, who is in Georgia right now working for FEMA, wants to chime in. Raider Mike, what's up?
Dude, I had to call. I just finished a Yacht Rock documentary. Have you seen this thing yet?
Yeah, it's the one that was put together by Bill Simmons.
On Max. HBO, whatever you want to call it now.
Yeah, HBO Max.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yacht Rock will never be mirrored again. That era's over. Take it for what it is. I know I'm known as a hard rocker, but that music speaks to my heart, just like yours. Anyway, what'd you think of the Chiefs game? Was that just bizarre?
Yeah, failed special teams, and, of course, the fumble late cost the Raiders in that game. But it's a good thing that you lost the game. You do not want to be winning football games right now. You need a quarterback, and you need your team to lose out.
I can't go on the radio and say that, though.
But it's the
on
truth.
Raider Nation Radio.
Yes, you can.
Well, I know it's the truth.
You call up JT
I was
the
the
Brick.
one that took all the shots.
No, you call
saying
JT the
lay
Brick.
down 5 weeks ago.
Call JT the Brick and tell him, look, winning a game against the Chiefs doesn't mean anything. What matters most is getting a quarterback, and winning one game right now with multiple teams in the chase for the top pick in the draft is going to do nothing but cost you.
Exactly. And I'm getting hammered for it.
What? But why?
I got on the front lines weeks ago. And I don't care. I'm going to do it again until it's done.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it is what it is. I got my Ducks. I think we're going to win a ring. Finally. 1939? Last time we won a ring? By the way, happy Thanksgiving. Belated. And where's the Godfather?
I talked to the Godfather today. He's doing well.
Yeah. Tell him I said hi.
I'll do it.
Tell him I said hi. Anyway, good luck to your Broncos. Knicks, it looks like it's going to work.
Yeah, it does.
And you got a badass D. Run with it. My badass D doesn't count. It just doesn't count until you get a quarterback.
No, that's what you
Anyway.
need. You gotta have a quarterback, Raider Mike.
It's Shador or bust. Love you, Chad. Miss you, bro.
You got it, buddy. Yeah, winning football games right now is not going to do the Raiders any good. I do think the Chiefs do look vulnerable, don't they? Are we being tricked again to where they look vulnerable and come playoff time they're going to be great? Maybe this is the year where finally Buffalo can go into Kansas City and get a win. You would think, because Buffalo looks pretty powerful right now. They look really good. So I think in the AFC, it's still really three teams primarily: Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City, although Pittsburgh is starting to emerge as a dangerous football team, and they very well could win that division. And Russell Wilson, yesterday was a very bad day for the Russell Wilson is Wash crew. Over 400 yards passing, second highest total in his career, 3 touchdowns, and the Steelers won a shootout over the Bengals with 44 points. I like Russ. I'm very happy that he's found a good fit with the Steelers, and he played good football for Denver last year, but it was clear early on that the fit between him and Sean Payton just wasn't there, and so he was able to move on and found a good place in Pittsburgh, and he has really brought a lot more to the table for that Pittsburgh offense. They've got the downfield passing game. They're still able to use Justin Fields in some run situations. They've got a defense, and they can run the football. And Najee Harris looks pretty darn good. I mean, he's running with some pop and physicality. So Pittsburgh looks tough. But right now, Buffalo appears to be the best team in the AFC. Now, that can change. But right now, Buffalo appears to be the best. Your teams that will be in the playoffs out of the AFC, in the East, it's going to be Buffalo. In the North, it's going to be Baltimore and Pittsburgh. You'll have Houston in the South, Denver, Kansas City, and the Chargers for your 7 teams. Those will be your 7 teams that are in from the AFC. And then we'll see what happens between Buffalo and Kansas City and who's going to get that top spot. In the NFC right now, Philadelphia is coming off an impressive road win at Baltimore. So you're going to get Baltimore and probably Washington in from the East. Out of the AFC North, it's going to be Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota. All 3 of those teams are legitimate threats in the NFC. You'll get one team in the South. Could be Tampa, could be Atlanta. And out of the NFC West, we'll see how things shake out. Arizona could win that division. Seattle could win the division. Really bizarre to see the 49ers fall off a cliff. But further example that when you get a chance to win it, capitalize, because there's no guarantees the next year. But very impressed with Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson showing a lot of resilience this year. Great bounce-back year for him. I thought Buffalo was sensational last night. Josh Allen was terrific, and it was a straight blizzard in Buffalo. Kansas City looks vulnerable, but they're still dangerous. And the Chargers with a good bounce-back after their loss to Baltimore with a road win at Atlanta. And you can see it with the Chargers. They're so well coached now. Jim Harbaugh just needs a little bit more time to get the type of players and talent that he needs or wants in there, but they're on the right track. And that division now with Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh, I mean, 3 best coaches in one division is crazy. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Monday Night Football is getting ready to kick off. Rip City Drive with Chad doing. That's just great. The Monday Night Football game's off to a horrendous start. The Broncos got the ball. They received the kickoff. They went 3 and out. They ran it up the middle on 3rd down and 3 and got stuffed. They pinned the Browns back to the 10-yard line, and Jerry Jeudy, the former Bronco, caught a 45-yard pass, and they're already in Denver territory. That's just great.
Not what we needed, Chad, but, a lot of ball left.
Well, what have you got online tonight? Fantasy points, or what's up with you?
Yeah, so I got fantasy points in the playoffs, and I need Denver's defense to show up tonight to advance to the next round. So, fingers crossed.
All right. Well, so far it's a bad start, but I expected this game to be a bit of a grip session tonight. And with Jameis Winston, it's like feast or famine. Sometimes he'll be razor sharp, and then sometimes he'll put on the dumb cap and put up some questionable balls. He'll give you chances to turn him over, but at times he can be very sharp and accurate with the football. And whatever. And we'll see how things shake out. But these type of games are tough. And the Browns, for all the issues they have on offense and with their quarterback play, they've been very effective with their defense. And the other thing, too, is they're physical at the line of scrimmage and can run the football. So we'll see how Denver responds. But it's early. But, again, these are the type of games where, if you want to make the playoffs and you're in control of your position in the AFC playoff race, you cannot be losing home games to the Browns, a team that's won 3 games on the year, if you want to consider yourself a playoff contender. You just got to find a way to win the game. And that's pretty much how that has to go. I think this is how it's going to go in regards to the playoff field in college football after the chaos that we saw over the course of the weekend. And it was another weekend of chaos, starting with Michigan and Ohio State in the morning. Who thought that Michigan would have a chance to win that game as 3-touchdown underdogs? One of the worst offenses in college football, no quarterback play. All they do is run the football. They're pretty strong at the point of attack, but they've been brutal this year. And they go into Ohio State and do them again because Ohio State, either by arrogance or overthinking the situation, they tried to play the game between the tackles where Michigan is strongest, and they lose the game. But you knew right from the start that it was going to be another wacky day in college football. And then Miami went down to Syracuse. They've been leaky on defense. They've been careless at times with the football. They've gotten very fortunate in different spots throughout the course of the season, and it finally caught up with them on Saturday. So they go down, and once again, it kind of flips things upside down in college football. But I think we have a pretty good idea of how the playoff field is going to look, meaning I think we know the majority of teams are going to be in. I think with the loss of Miami, I think one spot is open right now. One spot's up for grabs going into championship weekend, which is awesome. And we get a new batch of college football playoff rankings coming out tomorrow. I think it's going to be just after 4 o'clock on ESPN. And the Browns have just missed a field goal. I like that. I like that a lot. They get down there on their first drive in position to score, and they miss a field goal.
Looking good. Looking good.
Thank you, Cleveland. Thank you very much.
See, Cleveland going to Cleveland at some point, Chad. So you got to factor that into this one too. But
no.
Everything you just said, 100% true. The Broncos have been a cool story this year, I think.
What do you think about Bo? You think he looks like a QB1?
Oh yeah, no, he is displaying that same just. I don't know quite what to call it other than just the lazy term of like moxie, but it's like the dude was a flat winner at Oregon, right, and won so much over 2 years. You put him with a quarterback-friendly coach, and I'm not surprised to see him have success. In that same breath, that's why I'm still waiting to see when eventually Atlanta moves off of Kirk Cousins, because I think Michael Penix will ball out in the NFL. Those two dudes last year, watching them tear up the Pac-12 and obviously getting as far as they did, those two dudes were just studs, and I'm not surprised to see them balling out at the next level. I love to see it.
Yeah, I like Penix, and I like Bo Nix, obviously. This season I'm a huge Bronco fan, and I have been most of my life, but this season's been a lot of fun because I went into the season with no expectation. I didn't even think that they would be a factor come playoff time, but they are. I just cared about Bo Nix. I wanted to see him from day one all the way up until the end of the season, and I told myself going in I wasn't going to overreact from game to game. I wanted a full season to be able to sit back and gauge what type of quarterback he is. And so far, 12 games into the season, I think that he's a QB1. He's playing with confidence. He's getting better week to week. He's not turning it over. And right now he's on pace to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And now they're in a position to make the playoffs. So it's like I just have nothing bad to say. It's just been a wonderful ride. I'm enjoying watching the process of a young quarterback. The Broncos in my lifetime, they never have drafted and developed a quarterback. Elway was traded for on draft day, but they did not draft him. So this is kind of their first, we're going to draft a guy and develop him from the ground up. And I'm just glad that Sean Payton is there. He's an arrogant guy. He's kind of crazy too, but Sean Payton is smart with quarterbacks, and he knows how to develop them. And they're bringing him along slowly. But he's so smart and can absorb a lot of information. And I think with his experience, having so many starts under his belt, more mature than a lot of quarterbacks coming in to the NFL in their rookie season. So I've been very impressed with Bo.
How much do you think fit matters too, Chad? Because, I thought, very similar things to, the same kind of it factor with Caleb Williams. I was like, oh, there's no question this guy's going to be the number one pick. But we're seeing how much Matt Eberflus put him behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Talk about how, Drake May took some time. Like, to your point, you mentioned Bo could be right there for Offensive Rookie of the Year. 6 quarterback taken. That's still pretty impressive to me.
It is impressive. I think the problem with Chicago is that they should have fired Eberflus after last season and gone after the right coach to develop a young quarterback. And my guess would be like that organization needs a lot of direction and a lot of structure. So they need to think long and hard about who they're going to bring in as coach. But clearly, Ben Johnson would be a possibility. A great offensive mind, great offensive coordinator for the Lions. But you could bring in a disciplinarian who can bring structure and direction to the organization, and he can hire a great offensive coordinator as well. So if they hired a guy like Bill Belichick or someone like that, he can bring in a good offensive coordinator. But everything that they do now moving forward should all be about the development of Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a star. I just think he got caught up in a bad situation this year in Chicago. And for Bo Nix, I think fit is everything. Russell Wilson can still play football, and he's proving that this year with the Steelers. But he and Peyton together, based on the offense and the way he wants to run his offense, not a good fit with Russ. But Russ in Pittsburgh, with the offense they're running, a much better fit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to your point on Chicago, I'm just curious. I'm curious to see where they go with their hire, Chad, because this literally feels like deja vu. And maybe Ben Johnson's that guy, but this feels like deja vu when they said, oh, let's go pluck the best young offensive coordinator, not even young, but just best offensive coordinator we can find right now. At the time, that was Matt Nagy to go and then develop their franchise top quarterback, Mitch Trubisky. We've now learned Mitch Trubisky was not a very good football player and that didn't work out. But, I think it's going to be interesting to see where they go because they can't afford to mess this one up because I think Caleb Williams actually does have talent.
Oh, and there's no question he's got talent. I would look at a guy like Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, who was in Tennessee.
I like that.
The reason why I like a Vrabel type is because I think they need a coach who's very strong, someone who has conviction about how they want to run a football team, and someone that the players will respect, but also someone that can stand strong when it comes to outside influence within the organization. People trying to get their fingers in the pie and try to tell the coach how they need to do things. They need someone who's very strong, a strong personality like Vrabel, who can come in and provide direction, who can organize the way the football side needs to run. And then Vrabel can bring in an offensive coordinator and work with him to be able to develop the quarterback. But I would say a strong personality like a Vrabel type would be a pretty good direction for the Bears to go.
Yeah, that's intriguing. Another name I got thrown around just for his success. Could you see the Bears taking a risk and giving Cliff Kingsbury another chance after what he's done with Jaden Daniels this year?
No. You could. The reason why is here's the word on Cliff Kingsbury. Great offensive coordinator. Great quarterback coach, knows how to design plays and call a football game. But the real knock on him is that he is not a disciplinarian. He doesn't want to deal with that type of conflict. And so the problem is that things aren't tight enough because the players kind of run around and do what they want because Cliff isn't interested in being a disciplinarian type. It's just not his personality. So I think he's better suited to be a coordinator. And you look at him now after the failed run in Arizona, he winds up in Washington, and here's his. I think this is his real gift, Kingsbury. He looks at his player, and instead of trying to make the player what he wants, he looks at the player that he's got, looks at his talents, and he devises a system and an offense to suit his player's talents. And I think that's his true gift. So he gets Jaden Daniels, who I love, but he doesn't try to change Jaden Daniels in the way he plays. He devises an offense to suit his skills.
Well, and it's been impressive to watch because, like we all remember, the end of the Arizona tenure was not great. He famously said, "I'm going to Thailand," and was there for about a month, and then came back. So he's always a dude that I've kind of been intrigued with, and like you said, Chad, an offensive potentially genius, but you kind of have to be a tough guy sometimes, and for lack of better terms, know when to put the hammer down, and that makes sense. That if it's not your personality. These players are real enough to know that if you're fake trying to be a tough guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no question. But Ben Johnson, I mean, the reason why you've got to at least take a look at him is the work that they've done with Jared Goff in that offense is tremendous. Jared Goff looks like an MVP right now. He is, running that offense at a very high level. I just love the way he's playing, and that offense is putting up big numbers. So I think Ben Johnson has proven his acumen to be able to run an offense. We don't know what he would be like as a head coach, but his ability to work with a quarterback and develop a quarterback based on what he's done with Jared Goff, I would be intrigued to get him with a guy like Caleb Williams. My guess is you get a player like Caleb with that type of talent in the hands of Ben Johnson, he'd probably be able to do wonders with him. I refuse to believe that Caleb's not going to be a star. I saw him enough in college. His skill set is there. He's got the right demeanor. He's got the work ethic. He got everything you need to be great.
Oh, yeah.
Now he just needs to have the support from his organization and his coaching staff to be able to get the job done.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it was an interesting move. Not like 1 year is gonna set him back or anything, but when the Bears decided to keep Matt Eberflus, who, you look at his background: defense, and they fired their offensive coordinator a few weeks back. Like that's just not what you want for a rookie who we all think. And there's a reason. Like as good as Jaden Daniels is. If it's a redraft, there's probably still some GMs in the NFL, Chad, who are taking Caleb Williams first. Even still, if we redrafted right now. So, that talent's immense, and I'm with you. I'd like to see somebody with a great offensive mind, and Ben Johnson turning Jared Goff in from somebody that Sean McVay didn't even want anymore into an MVP candidate. That's real stuff right there. Impressive.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. All right, so the teams, here's what I think the playoff is going to look like. And the new batch is coming out tomorrow. We're going to get 4 teams in from the Big Ten, and I think all 4 of these teams are in right now. Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State. Those are your 4 teams. Oregon and Penn State will meet in the Big Ten title game. One of them will emerge and likely be the number 1 seed in the playoff. But all 4 of those teams are in. So you get 4 in from the Big Ten. There's going to be 1 team from the Big 12. It's either going to be Iowa State or Arizona State. I think the Sun Devils are going to win that game, and I think ASU will get into the playoff. You'll get 1 team from the ACC. Miami goes down to Syracuse over the weekend, and I think they played their way out of the playoff. So Clemson and SMU meet on Saturday night in the ACC title game. The winner of that game will make the playoff. The loser, if SMU were to lose, they might still get in, but probably not. So I think the ACC is going to get 1, and the SEC will get 4. It's going to be Texas, Georgia, Tennessee. Those 3 teams are in, and I think Alabama will be awarded the final playoff spot. And then you'll get 1 team in from the Mountain West, Boise State or UNLV. And Brenden, who do you like in that rematch with Boise State and UNLV, 2 teams you've seen this year?
Yeah, that is intriguing. I'll give Boise the nod. Ashton Jeanty is just... He is him, as the kids would say, Chad.
He is him.
Watching, Oregon State, I thought had a pretty good defensive game plan, all considering, and made him earn it. And I looked, you're like, oh, they made him earn it. And he still had 200 yards. So I saw Oregon State score and have some success against UNLV. I just don't think they have the horses to go 4 quarters with that team. Barry Odom, solid coach, love what they've done too, and Haj Malik Williams is a really fun dude to watch under center for UNLV. But yeah, I'm still going to ride with Boise because, man, Ashton Jeanty is going to win them. He's won them a lot of games, Chad, and I think he's going to win them a couple more before it's all said and done.
All right. And then the final team is Notre Dame. So there you go. 4 teams from the Big Ten: Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State. 1 team from the Big 12, ASU or Iowa State. 1 team from the ACC, Clemson or SMU. 4 teams in from the SEC, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and then the final playoff spot likely going to Alabama. 1 from the Mountain West, Boise State or UNLV, and Notre Dame is an independent. And I think those are your playoff teams. And then we'll see how the seeding plays out. But I'm very, anxious to see what the rankings are going to be tomorrow. Where do they have Clemson after their loss to South Carolina? What do they do with Arizona State, who is on fire? How far do they drop Miami? How do they view SMU? And it's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait. I mean, this, as I've said time and time again, this college football season is shaping up to be one of the best ever, at least one of the best in my lifetime. So there you have it. Last night, Anthony Simons, in case you missed it, went wild. He had 24 points in the third quarter. He only played 23 minutes in the game because he fouled out. He finished with 27, but caught fire in the third.
And the loose ball is grabbed by Jeremy Grant. Here's Grant on the other end. Slides into Simons. Open three on the way. Yes! 22 in the third for Anthony Simons. Blazers lead 88-87.
And he finished with 24 in the quarter. And after the game, he was asked about how he knows when he's on a heater.
Probably after, you see 3 shots go in a row, then you know, all right, especially the way they go in. You kind of shooting them, and they go in. It's a pretty clean make, and after that, you just all right, we better test, see if I'm hot, and just kept shooting. Got a couple wide open looks. They left me, and just went on from there.
Yeah, and that was awesome. It's nice to see Ant break out of his slump, his early season slump. I really like him. Good dude, and he's got a lot of offensive talent, man. It's great to see him out there. And what's cool about Ant lately is that he's finding other ways to impact the game when he's not scoring. We're seeing improvements on defense. We're seeing him take on a facilitator role, willingness to move the basketball. He is showing growth in his game right now, which is impressive. The big issue, of course, has been turnovers. 33 points for the Mavericks off 21 Trailblazer turnovers is a problem. Coach Billups after the game.
I mean, you plug one hole with the rebound, and then we did an awesome job with that. And then, the other hole was just, they did 33 points off of our turnovers, which is against any team. It doesn't even have to be a really good team. Against any team, that's a huge, huge number. It's tough to overcome that. But, man, we shot the heck out of it, 58% from three. You score 131 points, you should win that game. It was tough to get a stop.
Yeah. Yep. The Blazers, they got to win games in the margins. They can't allow a team to have 33 points off of turnovers. They can't afford to have a slow start to the game defensively where they're not fully locked in and engaged. And Annie even talked about that, too, where they struggle with a few of their coverages early. And the Mavericks were able to take advantage. But they were on fire from three. A season best 18 of 31. They were above 60% from downtown for basically the entire game. It was, the hot shooting for both sides made the game wildly fascinating. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. Broncos on top 7-0 right now with 4 minutes to play in the first. That's good news. So just win the game, Denver. Come on, don't screw this up. You got a golden opportunity to make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. You just got to take care of your business at home. Get the job done. All right, Jameis Winston led the Browns down the field with a touchdown pass to David Njoku, and they've tied the game up at 7. So I should get home in time for the entire second half. But 1 minute to play in the first quarter. Broncos and Browns tied up at 7. Denver at 7-5 on the year. The Browns at 3-8. And the Broncos competing for a playoff spot in the AFC. They're not going to win the division, but they're in control of at least the 7th spot right now. Just behind the Chargers, and the Broncos and Chargers will play in L.A. Here in a few weeks on a Thursday night. And that game got flexed to Thursday night. So we'll see how this game continues to shake out. But a tough matchup. Browns are tough. They do a lot of things well. And if they get solid play from their quarterback where he doesn't turn it over, then they'll have a chance to win the game. And the Broncos, as well as they're playing with Bo, they still settle for too many field goals. Because they're in the process of developing. And they just had another turnover, and now the Browns are in fine position to score another touchdown, and there it is. Touchdown, return for a score, and the Browns have taken a 13-7 lead. It's that simple. Boom, boom. Turnover, mistake, and now the Browns are on top with 2 touchdowns in a very short period of time. There you go. Let's see. Was it a turnover? It went into his hands. He turned. All right, so I don't know. They're going to have to review it and see if it was a fumble or not. I don't know if he had possession, but we'll see. Adam Troutman, the tight end, caught it, turned, and I don't know if that's a football move or not. It's close, real close. Real close. Ooh, I hope that's not a turnover. There you go. All right, so the Blazers are going to be down in L.A. tomorrow for the Clippers. More on that loss from the game last night. Here's Coach Billups.
We fought hard as heck, man. We didn't start the game off with the right intention. We cost us, and we have a really thin margin of error in type of situations, and you're playing against a team that was in the Western Finals last year. So even if they're shorthanded, they still got their best player, and they surrounded with a lot of shooting. So we wasn't very focused coming into the game for some reason, but we ended up turning it up. And then obviously at half, Ant caught fire in that third quarter, but was in foul trouble the whole time. Since the second quarter. That hurt us, but, man, we played hard as heck. We really did, and once we did finally start stepping up the defense and the pressure and the fires and moving around and flying all over the court, we finally got them to miss some shots.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't get off to a good start. Issues with turnovers, but, they're doing a lot of things well right now. Do you see that right now? Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing? Like, I'm seeing improvement in terms of how they're playing and what they want to accomplish. I really enjoy the young guys stepping up and playing well. In fact, one of those guys is Denny Avdia, who they picked up on draft night in the trade with Washington involving Malcolm Brogdon. Avdia is really starting to show his worth. And here's DeAndre Ayton when asked about Avdia and the way he's played of late.
Freaking stud, man. He's been doing his thing, honestly. And, he's been taking a big role of just, being our other ball handler, our guy that, play makes and, who could attack the paint and create some offense for us when we're stuck in the mud. So, he's truly the, X factor in the way he can do everything, score, rebound, and, play make. We truly believe in him just rebounding and pushing the ball because it put pressure on our guys completely.
Yeah, he does push the ball. In fact, Chauncey Billups said after the game on Friday that he's told Denny that, get out, continue to push the pace. And you've seen him every time he gets a rebound, he does not waste time, and he is up the court in a hurry. And Coach told him, hey, when you get out and run, if your teammates join you, they join you. If not, it's your play to make. And I like that because he's rewarding his work to say, hey, it's up to you. You can do that. And the coach is showing trust in him. But when you get out and run like that and you play that hard, then it will have an impact on your teammates. And I was talking with Casey Holdahl last night, and the one thing that he's done is help bring some togetherness in that locker room. Because when you have a player who can do a little bit of everything, and Denny can play defense, he's a facilitator, he can score, he can run, he can rebound. He does a lot of things well, but he's also one of the most unselfish players on the team, and he'll do anything that is required of him to help the team win, and he's not consumed with numbers. When you have a player like that, it's good to have that in the locker room because he's out there trying to do whatever he can to help the team win. And I think the more players you have like that, it just puts everyone in the right frame of mind out there. And then when you have your veterans like Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons, showing buy-in to moving the basketball and with a willingness to make the next pass, that kind of stuff's infectious too. And then when you see the ball moving and you see bodies bumping around the floor and guys making the next pass and you see those assist numbers up, those guys are having fun playing together. That's the way you want to do it. It's fun. It's fun to be able to play like that. It's great. So I think it's pretty cool. And I really like what Avi has brought to the team. There's a lot of guys in the league that, and it's understandable. They're worried about numbers because they know that numbers are how they're going to get themselves paid or get their next contract. But it is nice when you have guys on the roster who care more about the name on front of the jersey instead of the name on the back. And I'm not criticizing players that have to worry about themselves too. I'm just saying that when you have guys like that who bring atmosphere to the practices, who are willing to share the ball and be one of those, glue guys who do a little bit of everything, it makes you a better team. And we're seeing it, from other guys too. Tamani Kamara, his willingness to embrace defensive challenges. I mean, he was engaged and ready to take on Luka last night. And that's not an easy matchup because Luka's going to get a lot of his. That's just how he operates. He's tough. So, I don't know. I mean, all the young guys right now. Scoot, not as much, but Shaden, Tamani, Denny. We're seeing growth from Chris Murray. And obviously Donovan Clingan, who's out for probably another week or so with that knee strain. But you're seeing a lot of the youngsters, continue to play and develop and get better. And that's a good sign because you're going to need that. Or you're going to want that because they've got to make a determination on what their core is going to be moving forward with the young guys. And then they're getting some good play. DeAndre Ayton's quietly playing good basketball. And no one wants to talk about that because, DeAndre Ayton's been labeled and people see him one way. But he's been playing well this year for the Blazers. And regardless of what some of the media types think or people that cover the league think about Ayton, his teammates love him. And he's been playing well. And, he's been really good with the young guys on the roster, providing encouragement. So I like him. Yeah, there's just a lot of good stories on the team right now for where they're at. I mean, this team's not competing for a championship. It's about rebuilding. It's about developing talent. And then for the front office to continue to find ways to acquire young assets, either players or draft picks. And we'll see how things continue to shake out as the year progresses. But that's where we're at. But in regards to, obviously the Broncos are going to be in the playoffs, I think, as long as they handle business tonight and next week against Indianapolis. But I would say in the NFC, it's a pretty clear picture right now. In the NFC, you've got Detroit and Philadelphia. I think those are the two teams to beat. I think there are teams like Green Bay and Minnesota who can threaten, but I think right now it's a two-team race for supremacy, Philadelphia and Detroit. Really impressed with the Eagles' play of late. They've been terrific. And in the AFC, I think it's three teams, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City, with potentially Pittsburgh in the mix to create some problems come postseason time. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter. Tomorrow, RipCityDrive, 3 to 5:30, and then game day at 5:30 with Chris Burkhardt. Tip-off with the Blazers and Clippers at 7:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light, your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. So enjoy the game tonight. I appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you tomorrow at 3.